If you're thinking about moving to Suwanee, Georgia, don't pack your bags just yet because there's a few things that we need to talk about. First off, if you're going to move here, you definitely need to know like the basics about Suwanee, Georgia. You don't want to get into a city where you don't understand where it is or what the people are like. You want to make sure that you understand the good and the bad of any city before you move here. So let's start with the basics. Suwanee is in Gwinnett County, and Gwinnett County is considered one of the best counties in all of Metro Atlanta, one of the most desirable to move to. And Suwanee and Gwinnett are in the northeast part of Metro Atlanta, and one of the main ways that you would get to Atlanta from Suwanee is using Interstate 85. You could also use Peachtree Industrial Boulevard. These two roads or interstate highways kind of go parallel to each other from that northeast part of Metro Atlanta down to the city of Atlanta. To get to Midtown from Suwanee, you're looking at a commute of about 45 minutes if you go there at 1 a.m. If you go there at any reasonable time of the day, you're looking at about an hour and 15 minutes, maybe an hour and a half at the worst. Like if the traffic is absolutely terrible, it could easily reach an hour and 15 to an hour and a half. For that reason, many people who live in Suwanee don't necessarily drive all the way to Atlanta for work. There's plenty of job opportunities around Suwanee, especially in Gwinnett County because it's such a big city, big county, and so there's plenty of employers in that area, specifically cities like Norcross or Dunwoody. These are the cities that are closer to Atlanta, close to Interstate 285. That area there has plenty of employers and jobs, and so that's oftentimes an area where people commute to for work, and that commute is much shorter, not an hour and a half, more like maybe 30 minutes with traffic, maybe 45 minutes at the worst. I mean, I would think it's more like 30 minutes though from Suwanee to Norcross. But because the cost of living and the cost of homes are a bit higher in Norcross, for that reason, people often move a bit farther north to areas like Suwanee, or right around Suwanee you have Duluth or Buford. Lawrenceville is kind of east of Suwanee, and so these areas, those few cities that I just mentioned, are very common for people who are going to be working right there near 285 and like 85 or 285 and 400, where all those employers are. Very often people live in Gwinnett County to reach that area for work. What's up, y'all? My name is Victor with Atlanta Suburban Living, and we put out videos every week about what it's like to live in Atlanta and the suburbs around Atlanta. I'm also a local real estate agent here in the Metro Atlanta area, so if you have any questions about what it's like to live here or move here, relocate here, call me, text me anytime, email me. I'm the one who answers those phone calls and those text messages and those emails, and I'd be happy to help with your moving needs to the Metro Atlanta area. There are a lot of great things about living in Suwanee, but there are some things about living there that you need to be careful of, and there's some really big red flags that keep some people away from this area. And so this is something that's really important to know. We don't want to just gloss over all of the bad things about an area. Like if you're thinking about moving there, you need to have the whole picture. So for starters, there's a lot of great things about living in Suwanee. The downtown area is excellent. They've got some great shops and restaurants there. The big amphitheater and the big green park lawn that they have there in Suwanee is super popular. My kids and my wife, we love to visit that area. They also have a new part to that Suwanee downtown area, like a second phase, which I know I need to get some B-roll of, but it is also super popular and kind of new, maybe in the last 6 months or so. And so this is one of the best parts about living in Suwanee. Also, this is a very family-friendly area. Low to no crime. This is not something that people worry about in Suwanee. You're not walking down the streets of Suwanee and like worrying if there's some, crime issue. That's not really a thing in this area. Again, it's a very family-friendly area. And then another big one that is kind of controversial, or something that we really need to talk about, is that the public schools in Suwanee and in Gwinnett County are considered to be some of the best in all of Georgia. However, because of that, many people move to this area for the schools, and so these schools, according to some of the residents in this area, are a bit overcrowded. The schools have classrooms that are much bigger than other cities or other suburbs. And so for this reason, some people kind of shy away from Suwanee or from some of the schools in this area because of just how overcrowded they seem to be. Ultimately, something that you should ask yourself when you're relocating to any city, including Suwanee, is like, I want to be in an excellent school district, but is it worth maybe picking a school that is a little bit less than excellent? Like, instead of a 10 out of 10 school, what if my child goes to an 8 out of 10 school, but the school classrooms are not overcrowded, and maybe my child gets more attention from an excellent teacher, even though the school is rated an 8 out of 10 instead of a 10 out of 10? You know, if you pick those 10 out of 10 schools, you're going to be paying a premium for the houses, and those schools are going to be overcrowded. So this is something to think about. I know for many people, they would rather go to a school that maybe doesn't get as much attention. A 9 out of 10 school, but your child is getting more attention, may be a good trade-off. And then another big one that you really need to think about when moving to Suwanee is the amount of racial diversity. Now, I'm not going to say that there is no racial diversity in Suwanee or that there is racial diversity. The answer to that question is really that it's relative. It depends on what you're used to. If you come from an area like the Midwest in the United States where there's no diversity, then you might feel like Suwanee has a lot of diversity. But if you come from an area like, I don't know, New York or the middle of Atlanta or California, where there maybe is more diversity, then you might feel like this Atlanta suburb, Suwanee, does not have as much diversity. So ultimately, that really depends on what you are used to and your perspective. And so let's talk about this diversity thing a little bit more in Suwanee. According to the website datausa.io, the city of Suwanee is 54% white, 24% Asian, 12% of a black population, and then the rest of that population is Hispanic or a combination of things like myself. Latin American is one of those that kind of fits into that other category, which is always kind of weird. Like, am I an other, or I don't know. But either way, so that kind of racial diversity that you see there in Suwanee is, to some people it's enough, to some people it's not, but really it's again, it's relative. And so in my opinion, I think that the racial diversity in Suwanee is just fine. You know, I would prefer it to be a little bit more diverse, but I don't think that it is just one race. I don't think that they are closed-minded. I do think that the city of Suwanee and the residents of the city are open-minded and accepting and welcoming. And so that's something that maybe that helps. At least that's how I feel about the city of Suwanee. Another big one to think about if you're going to be moving here is what it's like buying a home in Suwanee. At the time of filming this video, we're kind of coming to the end of the winter season for real estate. And so we're kind of coming to the end of the slow season. So in the last few months, the average days on market for homes in Suwanee has been about 28, maybe 27 days. And so this is kind of a long time for homes in Suwanee. In the springtime, it's more like 14 days, so a lot less during the busy season. And this is the time of year when people are moving the most, getting ready for the new school year, and they don't want to disrupt their kids in the school year, so they wait for the school year to end. That's why the end of spring, early summer is the busy time of year for real estate. Again, during that period, it's going to be normal to see 14 days on market for most homes. Very rare to see 30 days on market for a home in Suwanee during the busy season. This means that you're not necessarily going to see a multiple offer situation. There are a few with like the best homes. They may see 2 to 3 offers per home, but for the most part, it just means that you need to be ready to go when you do find the right home. That means you should have a pre-approval, maybe having gone through underwriting. If you are selling your home, it's always going to be easier to get your offer accepted if your home is on the market or under contract. If you're using that home sale contingency to buy a home, the further along you are with the sale of your home, the easier it's going to be to get your offer accepted. And then when it comes to home prices, you can easily find homes in Suwanee for as low as $550, maybe even $500. But if you go anything lower than $500, then you're starting to see some fixer-uppers and some investment properties. And if that's what you're aiming for, then great. You can certainly find those investment properties in Suwanee in the 400s. But if you're looking for a home that's move-in ready, you should assume at least 550. And then another big one is the HOAs. I know many people are looking for an area where the neighborhood does not have an HOA because like you come from a state where the HOAs are terrible and you got Karens driving around in the golf cart. We don't do that here. We don't have Karens in the golf cart in the HOAs. There will be, of course, some neighbors who may complain if you've got a bright pink house and like you just painted and your bushes are overgrown. They do prevent those kinds of things from happening, but they're not nearly as strict here as they are in other states. So if you're really wanting to be in a neighborhood that does not have an HOA, Suwanee is not the place for that. I would say probably 95% of the neighborhoods in Suwanee have an HOA. Ultimately, whether or not you move to this city depends on how you feel about the city. When you come and you visit, and like the vibe that the city gives you is going to be a very big factor that determines whether or not you move here. And so I've made an entire video where we went on a tour of downtown Suwanee so you can get a good idea of what it's like there. You can check out that video right here. I'll see you in the next one.